Hi everyone, this is Clint from Persuasive Evangelism, and I'm walking at Lake Sacagawea on this cold, crisp fall day, and with Annie. Annie, look! Yeah, there's Annie. So today we're going to go over this book, Why Four Gospels by David Alan Black, The Historical Origins of the Gospels. Says Dr. David Alan Black has taught New Testament Greek for over 30 years. He holds a Doctor of Theology from the University of Basel and is currently professor of New Testament and Greek at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. So this is a short book, 70 pages. Basically talks about his theories on when the Gospels were written and in what order. So the majority of scholars right now at this time believe the Gospel of Mark was written first, then Matthew and Luke, and then John. But he proposes a more traditional order of the Gospels and dating. He says Matthew was written first, then Luke, then Mark, and then John. Everyone agrees that John was the last Gospel. And he has a lot of quotes from the early church leaders, the generations after the apostles, the ones closest to the events, and what they said about the composition of the Gospels, which is I found fascinating. So great resource, just pages of those quotes. And what you get from those quotes is they all list Matthew was written first, and then they say that Mark, the Gospel of Mark, is Peter's Gospel, what Peter preached when he was in Rome, and the audience wanted it in a written form to keep it. So Mark, Peter's assistant, wrote it down, and that's why it's. Some think it's shorter because it's basically based on speeches, so it's shorter than the other Gospels and so on, but what David Black proposes is that Matthew was written early, when after Jesus rose from the dead and the church was, spreading among the Jews in Jerusalem and the surrounding area. The apostles commissioned Matthew to write the Gospel of Matthew to give to people so they knew what happened. Because Matthew's they say it's a Jewish gospel. It's focused on the Jews' perspective. So Matthew was written first, and then as the gospel spread to the Gentiles, to the non-Jewish people, through Paul and other people, Paul, when he was in Rome, and Peter was in Rome too, and Luke, Paul commissioned Luke to write a gospel, focused on the Gentiles, bringing the truth to the Gentiles. So he did, and at that same time, Peter was preaching in Rome on what happened, which he witnessed, and Mark wrote that down, and Peter's preaching what happened while Luke and Paul were in Rome can basically give authenticity to Luke's gospel, and then John wrote it later. So it's interesting. A good resource just on a perspective on how the Gospels were written, but I really liked all the quotes from the early church leaders, and I'll read a couple if I can open it up. So the first one is by Irenaeus. He was born 130 and died in 200. He said, So Matthew brought out a written gospel among the Jews in their own style. When Peter and Paul were preaching the gospel at Rome and founding the church, but after their demise, Mark himself, the disciple and recorder of Peter, also handed on to us in writing what had been proclaimed by Peter. And Luke, the follower of Paul, set forth in the book the gospel that was proclaimed by him. Later, John, the disciple of the Lord and the one whom leaned against his chest, also put out a gospel while residing in Ephesus of Asia. And then I'll read one other quote if I can turn the page with one hand. All right. The second quote is from Clement of Alexandria, who lived 150 to 215 AD. Mark, the follower of Jesus. Mark, the follower of Peter. While Peter was publicly preaching the gospel at Rome in the presence of some of Caesar's knights and uttering many testimonies about Christ, on their asking him to let them have a record of things that had been said, wrote the gospel that is called the Gospel of Mark, from things said by Peter. Just as Luke is recognized as the pen that wrote the Acts of the Apostles and as the translator of the letters of Paul to Hebrews. So that's just a couple quotes, but there's pages of quotes about this. So for just that alone this book is a great resource. So I would totally recommend this book, Why Four Gospels by David Allen Black. It's only about 70 pages long, so you could probably read it in a day or two, but that's all for today. Thanks, everyone. We'll go one last look at Lake Sacagawea as the leaves are changing colors. Take care, everyone. Goodbye. God bless.